Ukrainian assault troops carried out a swift and coordinated operation in the Donetsk region. As a result, a key settlement on the Bakhmut-Sloviansk highway, Minkova village, was cleared of Russian occupiers, and a potential enemy advance in this area was thwarted. The soldiers note that the Russians suffered significant losses. 6 there, 6 moves. Let's give it a try. Reconnaissance and clearing of positions continue in the city of Kupiansk, as well as in the Oleksandrivka and Pokrovsky directions. Drone operators and assault troops are eliminating the remaining enemy forces and keeping the situation on this bridgehead under control.
The enemy's tactics don't involve any new solutions that could surprise us in any way. He also sends his people in small or medium groups for assaults, which bring no success. Sometimes they are motorized groups, and our paratroopers eliminate them as well. The Russians are not changing their philosophy of war or their approach to combat. Disregard for human lives and values is their main tactic. Ruslan Mereshev, commander of the 95th Separate Air Assault Brigade of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, in an interview with Ukraineform.
On the Pokrovsk bridgehead, per Ukraine's general staff, defense forces have repelled attacks since this morning. This is where Russian forces have most frequently tried to breach Ukrainian positions.
The days of the second decade of March show that the enemy is acting in an unconventional way. As soon as a unit arrives, they're immediately thrown into battle, taking losses. They consider this kind of tactic acceptable. And I think they will continue in the same way, sending units into battle, hoping to push through somewhere, break through, outflank, or slip through our defensive lines. So far, they haven't had much success with this.
Things were also heated on the Konstantinovka and Hellisyh sections of the front. Ukrainian soldiers note that the Russians aren't changing their approach. They keep sending infantry toward Hellisyh again and again, hoping to break through with sheer numbers. However, the defenders are holding their positions firmly and are striking their targets precisely. Military experts note that the Russians have not achieved any real success in any area. The enemy is only suffering colossal losses.
The main trump card that you allegedly pulled out? Putin on the sleeve. This is the capture of new cities. Konstantinovka, Vovchansk, Pokrovsk, and especially Kupiansk, Gulyaipol. And it all turned out to be a big lie. So in this situation, the fact is that the enemy is not only failing to capture positions, but is losing 1,000, 1,200, sometimes even 1,600 of its so-called aggressive units every day.
Just in the past 24 hours, Ukrainian soldiers along the entire front line destroyed 6 Russian tanks, 3 armored vehicles, more than 50 artillery systems, and 196 units of Russian automotive and special equipment, as well as shot down nearly 2,500 drones. In addition, according to the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Ukrainian Defense Forces also eliminated 1,220 Russian soldiers yesterday. Thus, the total losses of the Russian army since the start of the full-scale war have already exceeded 1,290,000 soldiers.
Pavel Akichek, head of military security programs at the Center for Global Studies Strategy 21, is with us on the air. Pavel, welcome. Glory to Ukraine.
Glory to the heroes. Good afternoon.
So let's start with the Pokrovsk direction. The General Staff reports about the intensification of enemy attacks. Ukrainian soldiers repelled 44 attacks. Let's take a look at this direction, Pavel. What do they want? What could happen?
After the de facto capture of Pokrovsk-Myrnograd, there are still pockets of resistance in Pokrovsk. But this resistance is unorganized. The enemy is trying to create a kind of bridgehead north of Pokrovsk, so that, if they have the resources, they can try to break through into the rear of the Ukrainian forces grouping north of Pokrovsk. This is the town of Dobropilya, and this is what it looks like. The western parts of Kostiantinovka and Druzhgivka. They would basically have to bypass the entire Kramatorsk agglomeration from the west. They no longer have the resources for such actions. the kind they had in the fall and winter of last year when they started the next phase of this operation. That's why, on the one hand, the enemy is redeploying some of its forces from the Pokrovsk direction to other hotspots, to the same Oleksandrivka, Hellisyh, and to the south. Some forces are being sent to Konstantinivka. This shows that, well, Pokrovsk still remains an important point. Regarding these ongoing combat operations, at least for now, it is certainly not the primary key factor. Furthermore, in addition to that, the ongoing clashes in the south, in the Hellisyh and Alexandrivka directions, where the outcome will determine the overall possibilities and prospects for a potential large-scale Russian offensive in the south this winter or summer are being determined right there on the ground. The second direction, I would like to highlight the city of Konstantinivka, and further to the north, Kramatorsk and Sloviansk, where the Russians are trying not to encircle our defensive area anymore. But to do that, they need to break through it head on. But for that, they need Lyman. And in the Lyman direction, to achieve success, they need to eliminate the Ukrainian armed forces bridgehead. So these represent the key factors in the 5 primary and most significant areas of focus that are currently determining the specific ways in which future events are likely to unfold and develop in the current global landscape. During the middle months and second half of the year 2026, looking ahead,
We can see that the Kharkiv region is under attack again. A drone struck a restaurant. There are casualties. People have been hurt. It's still unknown if there are any fatalities, but we can see that in the Belgorod region, Ukrainian National Guard fighters are actively engaged. They destroyed a cluster of tanks there that the Russians had prepared for an offensive specifically targeting the Kharkiv region. The occupiers tried to hide their plans in the forest belt, but Ukrainian aerial reconnaissance identified the exact coordinates of the equipment. Right after that, the crews of strike drones took off. Strike drone crews. As a result, 6 armored vehicles and 2 heavy trucks were hit, and a significant portion of them burned, completely destroyed. This was reported by the National Guard. Today is National Guard Day. That's the kind of good news we're getting from them. Could you please tell us, how are things going with drone operations? If we see that Ukrainian drones are able to take out Russian tanks after Starlink was shut off, it seemed like the occupiers started having major problems. How well are they able to make up for the lack of communication? And how actively are they using drones on the front lines? The Russians?
well, first of all, I want to congratulate us, the Guardsmen, on today's holiday, and the servicemen of Ukraine's security service on their holiday yesterday. By the way, speaking of yesterday, we can highlight the successes of the middle strikes, that is, drone strikes at medium range. Not only targeting the concentrations of enemy personnel, but also against their offensive military assets. Strike song? On the launchers for specialized narrowband missiles and tactical missiles. Why exactly weren't there any Zircons used in the enemy's most recent large-scale raid? It is because their launchers were successfully destroyed by our defense forces just the day before. Spotting a bastion column while it is on the move, that is a truly significant and major tactical success. Strikes on areas with missile launcher sites. Iskander-M ballistic missiles. That is also a tremendous and significant success, and a vital and substantial contribution to the ongoing protection of our rear, our cities, and our infrastructure from various threats. And I won't even get into the details regarding the deep strikes, by the way. For the 3rd day in a row, the ports of St. Petersburg, Ust-Luga, and the immediate surrounding neighborhoods. When looking at the modern battlefield, the role of tactical light aviation is crucial. Our own fleet is currently advancing at an incredible pace, showing great results, but there are still challenges. Despite our many advantages, it still looks highly uncertain and increasingly unstable. Every now and then, quite unexpectedly, the Russians manage significant technological breakthroughs, and then the situation on the battlefield shifts in a very direct manner, changes quite significantly. And today, these drone strikes are increasingly compensating for the significant shortfall. Artillery shells and various other sophisticated means of tactical destruction are now becoming the primary tools with which Ukraine's defense forces are successfully containing and holding back the enemy's relentless advance. And moreover, they're also partly taking on the critical roles of specialized assault and even primary offensive weaponry.
Pavel, you were just saying that the ports are burning, and that's true. There are already results. Reuters reports that Ukrainian drones have disabled 40% of Russia's oil export capacity. That's about 2 million barrels per day. So the overall level of effectiveness is exceptionally clear to see and truly quite significant in its impact. Let's talk about air defense systems. Ukraine has created a multi-layered system. Its air defense is already proving effective in major cities. New lines of defense are now being prepared for the western regions. This was reported by Ukraine's Ministry of Defense. Recently, air defense forces repelled the largest Russian attack since the start of the full-scale war, destroying more than 94% of the targets. Russia used both ballistic and cruise missiles, as well as nearly 1,000 drones. About 250 of them targeted the Kyiv region. The Ministry of Defense notes that just a year ago, this many were used to attack the entire country, but now they're being shot down within just one region. The agency also emphasized that the Russian Federation is trying to overload Ukraine's air defense system by using different types of weapons. In response, Ukraine is employing a comprehensive defense with aviation, mobile groups, drones, and interceptors. Indeed, we all witnessed this massive attack. Pavel, let's say a few words about our air defense systems, their capabilities, and how those capabilities are being improved.
Well, you see, as soon as we start talking about air defense, we begin with the means of targeting aerial threats. Drones, missiles, ground-based, and artillery systems. But the air defense system actually starts with the surveillance system. Surveillance and detection systems for identifying enemy strike assets. And in fact, this is the exact element that eventually became the key to the unification and solidifying of the whole system for the identification and distributing of targets. And to achieve this, we had to go through a long evolutionary process. From standalone individual radar units, systems for identifying and tracking various aerial targets, to a fully integrated and combined defense system. We have specialized direction finding stations, not just any ordinary equipment, but a whole strategic line of advanced direction finding stations, positioned extremely close to the front line, actually situated just behind it, in order to detect incoming enemy drones at the very earliest possible stage of their initial appearance, as soon as they enter our airspace. Now, we also have highly sophisticated long-range radar specialized surveillance aircraft at our disposal for the purpose of identifying potential enemy target locations. This significantly expands the radar horizon well past the effective reach of our air defense systems, which essentially implies that once more, even before the actual physical appearance of missiles and advanced weaponry, along with other means of destruction in the general area where our strategic interests and forces are currently located. Surface-to-air missile systems begin to acquire targets, and then it continues down the chain from there. A unified data processing system. So when the enemy says, and our own experts say, that Russia isn't just trying to overload the air defense system with these massive strikes, it's primarily about creating chaos. They are intentionally creating a state of total electronic chaos so that information about a wide variety of aerial targets with highly diverse and complex operational parameters, varying altitudes, sizes, and speeds, as well as distinctive and unique electromagnetic reflective properties. They simply overloaded the detection and decision-making system. When targets are allocated and distributed in a timely manner, the effectiveness is accordingly exceptionally high. If chaos begins to emerge in the detection and target distribution system, that chaos inevitably spreads to the strike assets as well. Several systems end up firing at the same target while other targets are left out of the engagement zones, and this creates an opportunity to break through the air defense. As we can see, as every single day goes by, this system of ours is not just changing and improving, it is continuously and steadily evolving. And here, for example, is the specific information for which our own military is criticized for sharing information right now with Middle Eastern countries about countering the Iranian. With this fast approaching onslaught, in a period of 4 to 6 months, we will already have a completely redesigned and highly advanced command and control system. It is evolving faster than the enemy can keep up with offensive capabilities.
Subscribe to UATV English and stay updated on the most important events, top news from Ukraine and all over the world, in-depth analysis, exclusive reports and interviews, all on hand in our channel. Join our community of viewers and stay tuned.